respected seniors, my colleagues, and my dear postgraduates. I am very thankful for the IOA team for giving me this opportunity. The topic of today's talk is radiological or X-ray assessment of the shoulder joint. Well, before moving to my talk, I want to emphasize upon certain points that bones are covered within the clothes of varied layers of muscles interspersed with the neurovascular structures. Whenever there is anything abnormal with the bone, it is not the bone always who is at fault, but other surrounding tissues could be at fault. Whenever we are about to interpret the radiograph, which is an indirect representation of bone, we should keep in mind the bone as well as the surroundings in which it is. Therefore, whenever my PG show me an X-ray of any patient, I ask him three questions. Have you seen the patient? Have you heard him? Have you examined him? Because radiograph is nothing in isolation. The agenda of my today's talk will be radiographic rules of ABCS and rule of two, anatomical considerations of shoulder girdle, radiographic views, trauma and other specific shoulder pathologies in brief, and take home message. So to begin with, radiographic rules. There are two important rules, rule of ABCS and rule of two. Rule of ABCS means adequacy and alignment. What it means? Adequacy means there are two things. One, the exposure of the film should be adequate, means we can easily interpret between the soft tissue and the bone. And the alignment, it should be properly aligned. Next, we should interpret about the bone. We should comment upon the cartilage or the joints, and we should comment on the soft tissues as well. Then comes the rule of two. Two orthogonal views, two joints, one above, one below, or two limbs for the comparison, two occasions for comparison also, and two injuries. So now I am moving to anatomical considerations. Well, anatomy of the shoulder girdle, as you can see here, shoulder girdle consists of humerus, scapula, and the clavicle. It has 5 joints: glenohumeral joint, acromioclavicular joint, and sternoclavicular joint. These 3 joints are actually the true joints, and the other 2 joints of acromial and scapulothoracic, these are the 2 false joints. In X-ray, basically, these are the landmarks which we have to interpret: acromioclavicular joint, clavicle, acromion, proximal humerus, glenohumeral joint, coracoid process, glenoid, scapular body, medial end of the scapula. These are the landmark signs which we have to interpret over the X-ray. Now, I want to emphasize certain important points of the proximal humerus. Postgraduates should know what is surgical neck. Basically, it is the region below the level of tuberosity where the humerus narrow is referred to as the surgical neck of humerus because of the frequent occurrence of fractures at this end. What is anatomical neck? The space between the two articular cartilage and ligamentous and tendon attachments. PG should know about what is GT, what is LT. They should also consider about the neck shaft angle of 130 degree, and the proximal humerus is retroverted to 18 to 33 degrees. So now let me explain you about the 2 views of the scapula. One is the lateral view of the scapula, and one other is the top-down view or the superior inferior view of the scapula. I have prepared this slide because there are 2 views in radiographs which are very important for the delineation of certain pathologies. And we should know that on the lateral view, how the scapula appears. Basically, acromion and the spine of the scapula, it lies posteriorly. Coracoid process lies anteriorly. There is a glenoid rim, and the body of the scapula lies vertically. If we see the scapula from above to below, coracoid process lies anteriorly, acromion and the spine of the scapula lies posteriorly, and there is a glenoid rim to which the humerus head articulates. Now, I want to emphasize few points about the pediatric population because they are not small adults. Though the views are almost same, but there are certain anatomical considerations that are to be taken care during evaluation of the pediatric population X-rays. PGs may be asked the age of the child by showing the X-ray. So I want to emphasize that proximal humerus has 3 ossification centers: one for the humeral head, one for the greater tuberosity, one for the lesser tuberosity. The humeral head, it appears at around 6 months. Greater tuberosity 3, lesser tuberosity 5, and at around 7 years, these 3 fuse together And this complex of head, GT and LT, this complex fuses with the shaft of the humerus at around 19 years. PGs, I recommend PGs to remember these years: 6 months, 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, and 19 years. Because just let me take an example. Though is the clavicle fracture, but concentrate on the proximal humerus. There is only the epiphysis of the humeral head. So the age of this, and GT is not appeared, LT is not appeared. So the age of this child cannot be more than 3 years. Sorry, cannot be more than 1 year, or it should be less than 3 years. Now, I want to emphasize also on that on the proximal humerus, the physis appears tent-like on the X-ray. In pediatric population, it's better to take the proximal humerus along with the elbow, because proximal part, the physis appears tent-like on the AP, and on the lateral, it almost appears round. Therefore, it's better to take the elbow along with the proximal humerus so that you can delineate which is the AP view and which is the lateral view. This is just for the completion of my slide. There are 2 primary centers in the clavicle and 1 secondary center. PGs may not be asked about these because there is no such clear delineation of the age. Now, shoulder joint, shoulder girdle. There are certain unique features, numerous bony landmarks in projections, numerous joints. And there is one important point that I want to emphasize upon. Scapula lies at an angle of approximately 45 degrees. In certain books, it is given 35 degrees. In some of the books, it is given 30 degrees. So no need to worry. Take it as 45. To the frontal plane of the thorax. Therefore, the plane of the glenohumeral joint is not the plane of the thorax. This is very important point in order to assess the movement of the shoulder as well as to get the X-rays done. Take an example of this. This is the axis of the thorax. This is the plane of the thorax. If we take the plane of the scapula, then this is the line. This is the plane of the scapula. And this angle between this is a 45 degree. So we have to consider that the scapula lies at an angle of 45 degree with the plane of the thorax. Now, moving to my next topic, views, standard views and other views. It is the important that standard views that are mainly we have to do. Standard views are anteroposterior views, lateral view, or scapulolateral view. Well, anteroposterior view, AP view, or lateral view, or scapulolateral view. Other views are Belpau axillary lateral view, trauma axillary lateral view, West Point axillary lateral view, apical oblique view, striker notch, Zenka view, Alexander, serendipity, and 30-degree caudal tilt view. I've just included for the namesake of these tests because PGs can be asked sometimes that what are these tests, because they are well-known tests. But PGs must emphasize upon the standard views, anteroposterior views, lateral views, or the scapulolateral view. So, trauma series. Radiographs which are used to evaluate traumatic shoulder problems are referred to as the trauma series X-rays. Trauma series X-rays can also be used to evaluate maximum of the other shoulder pathologies. Anteroposterior view. Conventional anteroposterior view, true anteroposterior view, and true anteroposterior view in internal and external rotation of the arm. There comes the lateral views. That is axillary lateral view or the superior inferior view that we usually call, supralateral view or scapular Y view, and there are certain modified axillary views. Now moving to the anteroposterior view. If this is the thorax, plane of the thorax, then first we have to see that how we have to take the AP X-ray, anteroposterior view of the shoulder. If this is the plate and this is the angle of the thorax, this is the 45-degree angle, and if we put the beam, then this beam is moving perpendicular to the thoracic plane, but it is not perpendicular to the glenohumeral joint. Therefore, there must, on the AP joint, there is an overlapping between the humeral head and the glenoid. This is the disadvantage of this view. Glenoid fossa overlaps with the humeral head, and therefore glenohumeral joint not well demonstrated. But this view is important. Now moving to the true anteroposterior view. So what's the difference between the conventional anteroposterior view and the true anteroposterior view? Let us consider. If we rotate the thoracic plane to 45 degree, which is the plane of the scapula, and we put the beam now perpendicular to the plate, then this beam will come perpendicular to the glenohumeral joint. In that way, it will delineate between the, now here on the radiographic view, you can see that the humeral head profile and the glenoid profile, they are well delineated, well separated from each other. So anterior and the posterior glenoid rim superimposed on each other. Glenoid rim and humeral head profile are separated from each other in parallel manner. You can see here, coracoid process overlaps with the glenoid in this way. These are three characteristics which in true anteroposterior view, which are not present in the conventional anteroposterior view. So the most important view is the true anteroposterior view. So what are the advantages? Clearly demonstrate humeral head profile. If the humeral head and glenoid profile overlaps, then it is helpful in diagnosing the anterior or the posterior dislocation. Now, there are two views also. If we take the conventional anteroposterior or the true anteroposterior view in internal rotation of the arm or external rotation of the arm. These two views help in delineating the entire surface of the proximal humerus from medial to lateral. So if when we take the X-ray and if we rotate the arm in internal rotation, it helps to identify the LT and the Hill-Sachs lesion. You can see that the LT is well demarcated on the medial side. It can only be obtained on the internal rotation view. And the Hill-Sachs lesion. This is the Hill-Sachs lesion. Now moving to the external rotation view. It helps to delineate the GT and the trough line sign. This is the GT delineation. And this is the trough line sign. Now moving to the scapular Y view or the scapulolateral view. Here you can see that the scapula looks like Y, as I've already discussed in the anatomy part. So how we should take it? Well, we put the radiographic plate perpendicular to the thorax, and we rotate the thoracic plane to 45 degree in which our scapula lies, and we put the beam parallel to the scapular plane. Then you can see that the beam is moving parallel to the scapular plane. In this way, we can obtain the scapulolateral view. This view is very important because with the help of this view, it is very helpful in diagnosing the anterior or the posterior dislocation of the head of humerus with respect to the glenoid. There are certain landmarks which are to be memorized on this lateral view and which are very important, such as coracoid process, which lies anteriorly. Then comes the acromion and spine of scapula, which lies posteriorly. The position of this coracoid process and acromion of spine, anterior and the posterior, which are important to differentiate between the anterior and the posterior dislocation of the humeral head. This is the body of the scapula, which lies vertically, and the humeral head, in the normal X-ray or normal scapular Y view, the humeral head superimposed on the glenoid. And if there is an anterior dislocation, then this humeral head moves towards the coracoid process. If it is a posterior dislocation, then this head of humerus moves towards the acromion, means posteriorly. And in that way, we can diagnose the anterior and the posterior dislocation of the shoulder. Now moving to the axillary lateral view or the top-down view of the scapula or superior-inferior view of the scapula. I have already shown the anatomical picture. So if the patient is made, for this view, patient is made to sit, or we can make the patient to stand. And if the patient is not having that much of pain, then arm is abducted to around 30 degree and the beam is placed perpendicular to over the shoulder joint. Then we can obtain this X-ray. This is the actual axillary lateral view. In this also, these landmarks are to be considered because this view is also helpful in diagnosing the anterior and the posterior dislocation of the shoulder. It also helps to delineate the proper glenoid profile, proper head profile of the head of the humerus. This is the glenoid profile. This is the profile of the head of the humerus. You can see that how well it is demarcated here. Now, this is the coracoid process which lies anteriorly. So if there is an anterior dislocation, head of the humerus moves towards the coracoid process. Now, this is the acromion or the spine of the scapula. If there is a posterior dislocation, head of the humerus moves posteriorly. That's why this axillary lateral view is important. So glenoid and head of the humerus are clearly visualized. A spatial relationship between the head of the humerus and the glenoid, therefore, useful for diagnosis. Loss of glenohumeral cartilage can be ascertained, or reduction of the joint space. Compression fractures of the head of humerus can also be ascertained on this view. Fractures of the glenoid rim, they can be very well delineated on this view. Fractures of the coracoid and the acromion. Now, moving to the modified axillary lateral view. Welpao axillary lateral view. Sometimes the patient is not able to abduct the arm. So, uh, if the arm is in the arm pouch, then we can make the patient to sit, or we can make the patient to lie and ask to tilt around 20 to 30 degree over the radiographic plate. You can see here how the patient is positioned. If the beam is placed from above to below over the shoulder. And this is the how we obtain this X-ray from top to down. This is the Welpao axillary lateral view. It was given by Bloom and Awata, not by Welpao, please mind it. Welpao name is given because of the Welpao bandage for acutely injured shoulder. Now, there is another trauma axillary lateral view given by the Tigo and Quillo, helpful in the polytrauma supine patients. In supine patient also, we can take the axillary lateral view. We can place the plate over the shoulder, above to the shoulder, and just the elbow is lifted 20 to 30 degree anteriorly, and the beam is placed from below to above. And in this way also, we can obtain the axillary lateral view. So let us summarize these three views. All the three views of the trauma series, anteroposterior view, or you can say true anteroposterior view, axillary lateral view, and the scapular Y view. There is very important information in these three views, that all these three views are perpendicular to each other. One is the anteroposterior view, one is the scapular lateral view, and one is the stop-down view. So because all of them are 90 degree to each other, therefore it maximizes the chances of getting maximum information through the radiographs. So I suggest the postgraduates to learn how to take these three views, and as maximum as possible, if it is possible, then order these three views in every trauma patient and just try to delineate as maximum information as can be possible. Now, there are certain views which were given. So I'm just moving fast with those views. There is one West Point axillary lateral view, or the West Point view. It was given by the Rukans, Fragen, or Botts, useful in anterior instability or traumatic anterior subluxation. There occurs the calcific deposits at the antero-inferior aspect of glenoid. Mind, antero-inferior aspect of glenoid, antero-inferior glenoid rim fracture. So this view is very important in delineating the antero-inferior aspect of the glenoid. In this, the patient lies supine, arm is hang down, and the beam is 25 degree from the medial to lateral and 25 degree from just above inferior to superior angle, and the plate is placed over the shoulder. In this way, antero-inferior aspect of the glenoid rim can be ascertained. So this view is helpful in anterior instability. Just PGs must remember this. There is an other view, apical oblique view. This view is also helpful in anterior instability. It clearly defines the antero-inferior or posterior-inferior rim of the glenoid. You can see here how well the glenoid rim is visualized. Displaced malunited rim fracture, glenoid bone loss, or antero-inferior cartilage, or bony bankard, you can say. So anterior instability, these two views, PGs can name these two views, apical oblique view and the West Point lateral view. Moving to the Stryker notch view, it is useful in the recurrent anterior glenohumeral instability, assessment of the posterolateral humeral head defect. In case of the recurrent anterior glenohumeral anterior dislocations, there occurs the posterolateral humeral head defects, and this view can assess this notch defect. So patient lies supine, plate is positioned on the back position, and the beam is tilted 10 degree towards the axilla. And in this way, we can assess the notch. There is another view, just name for that, Zanka view, or the 10 degree cephalic tilt view, 10 degree cephalic tilt view, because the beam is tilted 10 degree cephaloid and the plate is positioned on the back side. It clearly delineates distal end of the clavicle or the acromion and AC joint pathology or the fractures. So if the postgraduates are asked, then which view is important for the AC joint or lateral end of the clavicle or acromion, then it is the Zenka view or the 10 degrees cephalic tilt view. There is another view, Alexander view. This view is same as the scapulolateral view, but the only difference is that when you ask the patient to stand for the scapulolateral view, ask the patient to take the arm fully adapted, just shrug the shoulders. In that way, you can very well delineate the AC joint. It is to delineate the posterior dislocation of the clavicle at the AC joint. In case of dislocation, there will be overlapping of the distal end of clavicle over the acromion. This is the Alexander view. Moving to the serendipity view or the 40 degrees cephalic tilt view. For the sternoclavicular joint, basically it is helpful to identify sternoclavicular joint injury. Anterior or the posterior dislocation can be delineated. No doubt CT is the best for the diagnosis, but if CT is not available, this view can be done and postgraduate can say that, sir, if CT is not available, I can do the serendipity view for the delineation of the sternoclavicular joint. And this is how the X-ray is taken. Plate is placed on the posterior aspect of the head and the shoulder, and the beam is placed 40 degree from the vertical towards the sternoclavicular joint. Anterior sternoclavicular dislocation is benign, but the posterior is malignant dislocation. So that's why it is very important to diagnose between the anterior and the posterior dislocation of the sternoclavicular joint. There is another view, 30 degree caudal tilt view. It is helpful in impingement syndrome, rotator cuff tear, to delineate the acromion spurs. I have taken this slide for just to demonstrate this view in case the PGs are asked that which view is important in impingement syndrome or rotator cuff. So this view is important for that. Acromion spurs, calcification in the coracoacromial ligament, anteroinferior proliferation of the acromion. And to note down, Bigliani et al. Identified 3 types of acromial shapes. Basically, postgraduates can be asked that what are the 3 types of the acromion and on which view Bigliani has described that this is the view on which Bigliani has described these 3 types of acromion: flat acromion, curved acromion, and the hooked acromion. This is also called the impingement X-ray. So now moving to the trauma and other pathological conditions. Till now, we have seen that how the different views of the shoulder joint can be taken. Out of all those views, AP view, lateral view, and axillary scapular lateral view and axillary lateral view, these 3 are most important, and every PG must know how to take these X-rays and what landmarks to be seen on these X-rays. Now moving to the trauma and other pathological conditions. Trauma, tumor, infection, arthritis, avascular necrosis of the head of the humerus. For most of these conditions, actually, AP trauma series is more than sufficient. Most of the times, anteroposterior view, to some extent, scapulolateral view or axillary lateral view. There is very less requirement of other views. So trauma, get the trauma series X-rays done if there is a case of trauma. Fractures could be there of clavicle, proximal humerus, scapula. It could be glenoid, coracoid, spine of scapula, and acromion process. Dislocations of glenohumeral joint, acromioclavicular joint, sternoclavicular joint, scapulothoracic joint. Dislocations for the glenohumeral joint, anterior, posterior, inferior. Get the all 3 X-rays done, AP, scapulolateral, axillary lateral. You can very well delineate this glenohumeral joint dislocation. For the acromioclavicular joint dislocation, I have just told you, get these X-rays done trauma series, but there is another separate X-ray which you can do. Sternoclavicular joint, get these X-rays, and if you want another special X-ray, then it's the serendipity view and the scapulothoracic joint. It can be very well delineated for scapulothoracic joint on the AP view, but better to take the chest view, chest X-ray, in which both the parts of the thorax come, just to compare about both the scapulothoracic joints. So PGs must remember that whenever they are given an X-ray, then how to read trauma X-ray. I suggest them follow the ABCS rule in everything almost. So let us apply this rule and certain other factors here. Whenever you are given an X-ray, mind it, first refer to as, sir, it is an AP view, or don't use the short forms, it is an anteroposterior view, or whatever view you have been given. Suppose it is given scapulolateral view, say it is a scapulolateral view. If it is given axillary lateral, say it is axillary lateral radiograph. Then comment on the side of which it is. shoulder, or sometimes chest X-ray is also given. So not say shoulder, say chest X-ray. Then comment on whether the skeleton is skeletally mature or immature patient. Then comes to the fracture description after these points. So anteroposterior radiograph of left or right shoulder in a skeletally mature or immature patient. Now describe about the fracture or dislocation if it is a dislocation case. So first comment on which bone, whether either it is a clavicle, scapula, or humerus. Then exact location of the fracture means in that bone, which part of the bone is involved. Shaft of the clavicle, lateral or the medial of the clavicle, proximal humerus, or what it is, whether it is the coracoid, whether it is the acromion, or the body of the scapula or the glenoid rim. Then comment on fracture pattern, means description of the fracture line, how it is, whether it is transverse fracture or what kind of the fracture it is. Then comment on whether the fracture is intra-articular or extra-articular. Then comment on the alignment of the different fracture fragments of the bone, whether they are varus, valgus, rotation, dissection, means how the various fracture fragments are aligned to each other. Comment on that. Then classification, if possible. Now, if it is a dislocation case, then the fracture description may not be required there. Then you have to comment on the joint. That, sir, on the anteroposterior radiograph of the left or right shoulder, skeletally mature, immature patient, there is a loss of normal relationship of articular surfaces. You have to comment on the direction of displacement of articular surfaces, in which direction the two respective articular surfaces has been displaced. Take one as a fix and describe the other one with respect to that one. Suppose in glenohumeral joint, scapula is fixed, describe the proximal head of the humerus, whether it is displaced anteriorly, posteriorly, inferiorly, in that way. And on the last, don't forget to comment on the soft tissue shadows. So I have taken all the points in this. Every PG must remember how to read the trauma X-ray. And I have also followed the ABCS rule, means adequacy, bone, cartilage, as I have commented on the joint and the soft tissue. Now, these are the different X-rays. In this X-ray, you can see there is a clavicle fracture, proximal humerus fracture, lateral and clavicle fracture, glenoid rim and scapular fracture. Whenever you have been given these X-rays or any other X-ray of the fracture or dislocation, please comment accordingly, step by step, in a step-by-step manner, as I have told you in the previous slide. Now, moving to the anterior glenohumeral dislocation. I have already explained you the three views: AP view, scapular Y view, and the axillary lateral view. In any trauma X-ray, in any trauma, get these views done. Now, what you will see, if there is a case of anterior glenohumeral dislocation or anterior shoulder dislocation, see here, on the anteroposterior view, glenoid profile is there, the head of the humerus will displace medially and inferior, medially to the glenoid rim, and it lies inferior to the coracoid process. Mind these two words, medial to the glenoid and inferior to the coracoid. This is the characteristics of anterior shoulder dislocation on AP radiograph. Now move to the scapular Y view. You have to delineate what are the profile of the head of the humerus, what is the profile of the glenoid profile, and compare these two with respect to the coracoid process, which lies anteriorly, and the acromion process, which lies posteriorly. So if the head of the humerus is moving towards or is displaced towards the coracoid process, which lies anteriorly, it is the anterior shoulder dislocation. Here in this X-ray, you can see that head of the humerus is moved towards the coracoid process, which lies anteriorly. So this is the anterior shoulder dislocation. On the axillary lateral view, mark the landmarks, as I already told you. Mark the glenoid profile, mark the humeral profile, mark the coracoid process, mark the acromion process. Now see the head of the humerus, in which direction it has moved. In this X-ray, you can see the head of the humerus is moved towards the coracoid process. So it is the case of the anterior shoulder dislocation. Moving to the posterior glenohumeral dislocation, I will interpret in the same way as I have interpreted the anterior glenohumeral dislocation. On anteroposterior view, you have to see the profile of the head, profile of the glenoid rim, and see whether how the head of the humerus has moved. In this, the head of the humerus is not lying medial to the glenoid and is not lying below to the coracoid. Therefore, it is a posterior dislocation of the shoulder. And in this, you have to delineate the light bulb sign. PGs can be asked, what is light bulb sign? On the scapular lateral view, see the profile of the head of the humerus with respect to the glenoid and acromion process and the coracoid process. Here you see the head of the humerus moves towards the acromion process, which lies posteriorly. It means it is a posterior dislocation. In the axillary view, you can very well see that the head of the humerus profile lies posteriorly because it has moved towards the acromion because the coracoid is lies anteriorly. Therefore, it is the posterior dislocation. Moving to the inferior glenohumeral dislocation, you can very well delineate the head of the humerus lies inferiorly to the anterior rim, but it is not lying medial to the glenoid or inferior to the coracoid. Therefore, it is the inferior dislocation of the shoulder. There is another dislocation, acromioclavicular joint dislocation. You can very well delineate that how the clavicle moves up with respect to the acromion. Scapulothoracic dislocation. In previous slide, I have suggested that if you are suspecting scapulothoracic dislocation, keep 2 points in mind. Take the chest X-ray to compare both sides and mind these 2 things. The distance between the clavicle and the acromion, coracoid process, and the distance between the acromion and the clavicle. Acromioclavicular. Normally, it is 0.5 between the acromioclavicular distance is normally 0.5 to 0.3 to 0.8 or you can take half centimeter, and the distance between the coracoid and the clavicle you can take 1 centimeter. Here on the right side, you can see that how the distance is increased between the lateral acromion and the lateral end of the clavicle as compared to the other side. You can also see that how the medial border of the scapula is moved away from the midline. It is a clear-cut case of the scapulothoracic dissociation or scapulothoracic dislocation. Now, I want to comment on another important thing, pseudodislocation. In this AP view, you can see that the head of the humerus lies inferiorly. Means there it seems to be subluxated or dislocated, but in anteroposterior view. But just confirm on the lateral view. On the lateral view, it is almost superimposed on the glenoid rim. So we cannot say it is not the case of the anterior or the posterior dislocation. Basically, what is pseudo? It is actually the pseudo dislocation. In acute trauma patients, there occurs the collection of the blood, means hemarthrosis. In that case, because of the collection of the blood, head of the humerus subluxates inferiorly, and that is the pseudo dislocation. Sometimes fat blood interval or FBI is delineated in these cases. So take these 2 points, what is pseudo dislocation and what is fat blood interval. Now I move to the other pathological parts. Tumors, I have not explained in clearly because there is a separate topic that how to explain the tumors, and it is a separate topic altogether. So what tumors you should concentrate on the shoulder or maximum on the proximal part of the humerus. These are usually the simple bone cysts, aneurysmal bone cyst of proximal humerus, giant cell tumor of the proximal humerus, chondroblastoma of the proximal humerus, exostosis of proximal humerus and scapula, eosinophilic granuloma, synovial chondromatosis, and chondrosarcoma. These are the few or almost altogether the tumors or benign and the malignant lesions that you can encounter on the shoulder X-ray. So let us see quickly the picture. Just it is this is the case of the eosinophilic granuloma. You can see the well-lighting lesion, skeleton, and sequestrum is bony sequestrum is there inside. I suggest PGs to remember what are the causes of bony sequestrum. Eosinophilic granuloma is another cause of the bony sequestrum along with the chronic osteomyelitis. Lymphoma is another cause and fibrosarcoma is another cause. So you remember these 4 causes of the bony sequestrum: eosinophilic granuloma, lymphoma, fibrosarcoma, and the first and important most, the chronic osteomyelitis. Next X-ray is of chronic chondromatosis. The other X-ray is of the chondrosarcoma. You can see the calcific deposits, and here you can see how the soft tissue is evolved. Moving to the other, this is the case of the epiphyseal lesion with sclerotic margin, lytic lesion with sclerotic margin. It is an X-ray of the chondroblastoma. This is an X-ray of the simple bone cyst, and this is an X-ray of the aneurysmal bone cyst. I'm not moving into the detail because of the time paucity, and the explanation of the tumor X-rays is altogether a different topic. I want to comment on the pseudocyst. PGs must remember this. There is a well-defined lytic lucency in the area of the greater tuberosity. Just an anatomical variant. It is not a pathological thing. Then is increased cancellous bone in the region of the greater tuberosity. So here is the lytic lesion. It is a benign or the no-touch lesion. Now, moving to the another part of the pathology, infection. Infection could be pyogenic in the shoulder. Infection could be tuberculosis. So pyogenic, we can found the like well-defined lytic lesion, and clinical picture will tell us that it is an acute sign of pyogenic infection. Mostly it occurs in young children, the septic arthritis of the shoulder. Now moving to the tuberculosis. Tuberculosis, as you all know, that it occurs in the two forms, wet form and the Kari-Sikta form. EGs must remember these two forms and how these two forms present. So in case of the active tuberculosis, what are the findings that PGs can get on the X-ray? That there could be localized osteoporosis, there could be cloudy appearance of the glenoid and the humeral head, articular margins will be fuzzy, destruction of the head of the humerus, pathological subluxation of the joint. These 5 findings you can found on the active tuberculosis. I suggest PGs should remember these points, and along with the advanced disease points, gross diminution of the joint space, irregular destruction of the joint margins, tuberculous cavities in the proximal humerus and the glenoid. This is the picture of secondary osteoarthrosis, which develops later on. Now, moving to the arthritis, another pathological aspect that you have to see on the shoulder X-ray. And you can very well see that most of the conditions there can be very well delineated on the AP views. So, hallmark of the degenerative joint disease. PG should remember these 3 points. For any degenerative joint disease, there must be sclerosis, there must be osteophytes, there must be joint space reductions. Plus minus could be there, means 2 points could be there, 1 is not there, all 3 could be there. In this X-ray of degenerative joint disease, you can see that there is an sclerosis, there are inferior osteophytes, and there is a joint space reduction. It is a clear-cut X-ray of degenerative joint disease. There occurs also bilateral symmetry in case of primary osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, unilateral, you can find in the post-infective osteoarthritis or post-traumatic osteoarthritis. This is the X-ray of rheumatoid arthritis. Now, I want to also comment on avascular necrosis of the head of the humerus. Mind these 3 or 4 features which you can find on the avascular necrosis of the head of the humerus. Anteroposterior radiograph is well sufficient enough to diagnose this. Point out the side, skeletally mature or immature. Mainly it is found in the mature patients. So keep 3 points in mind: patchy sclerosis in head of the humerus, subchondral lucencies, articular surface collapse with fragmentation. This X-ray is of advanced avascular necrosis. Features could be there, 1 or 2, but you have to remember these 3 or 4 findings. And there is a separate classification for AVN of the head of the humerus. I suggest PGs should know that classification. Now, so just to conclude, my take-home message will be for all postgraduates, radiographs are nothing in isolation. So always see the patient, listen to the patient, examine the patient before moving to the X-ray reading. See him, heard him, examine him. Then radiographs are an indirect visualization of the bone, having its spatial relationship with various soft tissue structures. Therefore, master your anatomy first before moving to reading X-ray. Postgraduates should know trauma series X-rays. They are must for every postgraduate. How to take the AP view, anteroposterior view, true anteroposterior view, internal rotation or external rotation. What are the different landmarks on these views? And always try to get done all 3 AP scapulolateral and axillary lateral views. Postgraduates should learn how to read X-rays of various pathologies, especially trauma, tumor, and infection. I have given you the guidelines for the trauma series X-ray, how to read the trauma X-ray. For tumor X-ray, there is a separate way how to say or how to interpret the tumor X-ray. Your eyes can't see what your mind don't know. So, read before moving to see X-ray. Radiographs have their own limitations, and therefore, whenever in doubt, go for further advanced imaging like CT, MRI, or arthrography. With this, I conclude my talk. Thank you.
Okay.